there is a quiet war that many people carry inside them, one that rarely gets named, but is felt every single day. It is the pull toward being seen, being noticed, being chosen, and at the very same moment, a paralyzing fear of what might happen if someone actually gets too close. You want to be known, but the thought of truly being known terrifies you. You crave connection, but the moment it begins to deepen, something in you pulls back. If you have ever felt this contradiction living inside you, this is for you. This is not a character flaw. It is not vanity. It is not manipulation. It is one of the most deeply human psychological tensions that exists. The simultaneous hunger for attention and the terror of vulnerability. And understanding why this happens inside you may be one of the most important things you ever do for yourself. To understand this pattern, we have to go back. Not because the past defines you, but because the past explains you. For most people who experience this push-pull dynamic, the roots trace back to early experiences with attachment. As children, we all needed two things equally: to be seen and to be safe. But for many, those two things did not come together. Perhaps the attention you received as a child was conditional: praise when you performed well, withdrawal when you struggled. Perhaps love in your household felt unpredictable, warm one moment and cold the next. Or perhaps you were emotionally neglected, not seen at all, and you learned that the only way to matter was to earn it, to perform, to make yourself impossible to ignore. Environments like these, a child's mind draws a very logical conclusion. Attention feels good, but closeness is dangerous. Getting noticed keeps you relevant, but letting someone see the real, unfiltered, uncertain version of you, that is where the risk lives. That is where rejection hides. And so, without even realizing it, you learn to curate yourself. You learn to be visible in the ways that felt safe, while keeping the most tender parts of who you are carefully hidden from view. This is where the behavior takes shape, and it does not disappear when you grow up. It simply becomes more sophisticated. In adulthood, this pattern often looks like someone who is magnetic and engaging in social settings, yet feels profoundly lonely at home. It looks like the person who is always the one making people laugh, keeping the energy alive in the room, being memorable, but who deflects the moment a conversation turns genuinely intimate. It looks like the person who posts consistently online, crafting a visible presence, craving the validation of being seen, yet feels deeply uncomfortable when someone responds with real emotional depth, asking how they truly are. It shows up in romantic relationships as a cycle that is painful and confusing to live through. You are drawn to people who show interest in you, and that initial attention feels intoxicating. It confirms that you matter, that you are worth choosing. But as the relationship deepens, as the other person begins to ask for more of you, to want access to your fears and your wounds and your uncertainty, something shifts. Walls come up. You create distance, sometimes through conflict, sometimes through emotional unavailability, sometimes simply by losing interest and moving on. Not because you do not care, but because real intimacy requires you to be seen in ways that feel genuinely unsafe. Psychologists often describe this as a conflict between the attachment system and the self-protection system. The attachment system is ancient and powerful. It drives you toward connection, toward belonging, toward love. But when the self-protection system has been conditioned to associate closeness with pain, it fights back just as hard. The result is this exhausting cycle of approach and retreat, wanting and withdrawing, reaching and then pulling away before anyone can reach back. What makes this particularly painful is that it is often invisible even to the person experiencing it. You may not consciously know you are doing it. You may genuinely believe that you want deep connection. You may feel confused about why your relationships never quite reach the depth you ache for. You might tell yourself that people do not understand you, that no one truly sees you, without recognizing that you have built very careful systems to ensure they cannot. There is also a grief underneath this pattern that does not often get acknowledged. The grief of being surrounded by people and still feeling completely alone. The exhaustion of performing visibility while hiding authenticity. The sadness of wanting to be loved for exactly who you are while being terrified to reveal who that actually is. This grief is real. It deserves to be honored, not dismissed. And here is something important to sit with. The attention-seeking behavior is not the problem. It is the solution your younger self invented to meet a real and legitimate need. The need to matter, the need to belong, the need to exist in the eyes of another person and feel that your presence has value. There is nothing wrong with that need. Every human being on this planet shares it. What happened is that somewhere along the way, you learned to meet that need through performance rather than through presence, through being seen rather than through being known. The fear of vulnerability is not weakness either. It is wisdom that was born in the wrong environment. At some point in your life, being open, being honest, being emotionally exposed led to pain. Your nervous system remembered that. It created a protection strategy that made complete sense then. The work now is not to shame that strategy, but to gently examine whether it is still serving you or whether it has become the very thing standing between you and the connection you most deeply want. Healing this pattern does not happen all at once. It is not a single breakthrough moment. It is a slow, deliberate practice of learning to tolerate the discomfort of being seen, really seen, without immediately retreating. It begins with self-awareness, noticing when you reach for performance instead of authenticity, noticing when you deflect instead of engage, noticing when the walls come up and asking yourself what they are protecting. It continues with self-compassion, understanding that these patterns developed for a reason and that they do not make you broken or damaged. They make you human. It deepens through small, intentional acts of vulnerability, sharing something real in a conversation, and staying present with the discomfort rather than immediately redirecting. Allowing someone to care for you without deflecting the care with humor or self-deprecation. Letting a moment of genuine connection breathe rather than interrupting it with distance. And perhaps most importantly, healing comes from learning to distinguish between the audience and the witness. An audience watches your performance. A witness sees your reality. For so long, you may have surrounded yourself with audiences, people who know the version of you that you have carefully curated. But what you are truly starving for is a witness. Someone who sees the uncertain, unfinished, beautifully imperfect truth of who you are and stays. You are allowed to want that. You are allowed to need that. And you are also capable of building the inner safety that allows you to receive it. The war between wanting attention and fearing vulnerability does not have to be permanent. It does not have to be the architecture of all your relationships, all your interactions, all your moments of connection. With time, with tenderness toward yourself, and with the courage to let people in just a little further than feels comfortable, that gap between being seen and being known can begin to close. You do not have to keep performing to prove you are worth loving. You already are. And the moment you begin to believe that, truly believe it, everything changes.